everyone. Today is Wednesday, December 15th, Eastern Time. This is the 9th issue of Broncos Review. Today we are going to talk about why Xi Jinping is destined to completely ruin Sino-US relations and will definitely ruin Sino-US relations. The 8 things that failed during Xi Jinping's tenure, Episode 3. The Chinese version was released on December 4th, 2021, and the English version will be released today. There may be many grammatical errors and name pronunciation problems, but I really appreciate your patience. First, the Sino-US relationship I am referring to is actually the relationship between the CCP and the United States. The relationship between the people of the two countries cannot be destroyed. Although the CCP has always wanted to kidnap the Chinese people, we all know that the CCP does not represent the Chinese people. They have never dared to hold a real election. Objectively speaking, since the CCP seized power, it has always regarded the United States as its enemy. At first, the CCP was not qualified to be an enemy of the United States. It's only a thug hired by the Soviet Union. However, the CCP's penetration of the United States has never stopped. Democracy and freedom have always been the opposite of dictatorship, not to mention the most dictatorial CCP. Whether it is Deng Xiaoping's concept of hiding the purpose and waiting for the opportunity, or Jiang Zemin's idea, or Hu Jintao's, or even Xi Jinping's, the concept of treating the United States as the greatest enemy is in the same line. It's just that the previous methods are routine infiltration, bribery, etc. Objectively speaking, this method should last another 10 or 20 years. Unless China's economic strength is equal to that of the United States, and its military strength is at least 60% of that of the United States, it can challenge the United States head-on. Unfortunately, when Xi Jinping took over, he might be the last leader who truly believed in communism. Mao-style communism education, as well as its elementary school cultural knowledge structure and 7 years of educated youth life in Langjia, a poor rural village, determined his mode of thinking and made him believe in spiritual power. He believed that in the open environment of globalization, to transform the CCP and China into a purely ideological political party and country. Xi is also an idealist. He seems to completely ignore the fact that China's almost economic collapse in Mao Zedong's era. Without Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms, the CCP might have died out. Why did the CPSU collapse? An important reason is that ideals and beliefs have been shaken. This is what Xi Jinping said during an inspection in Guangdong in 2012. He lamented, "Finally," Gorbachev said lightly, announcing the dissolution of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and the largest party was gone. In the end, there was no real man come out to fight. What Xi Jinping doesn't understand is that in fact, no one in the CCP is a man. So far, no leader has dared to completely deny Mao Zedong's mistakes and turn the CCP into an ordinary and normal party, thus gaining a new life. It is precisely this that led to Xi Jinping, who thought completely contrary to the values of the times, came to power and brought the CCP into the abyss. Xi Jinping urged himself and his subordinates not to forget the lessons of the collapse of the Soviet Union, but he forgot the 2 lessons of the collapse of the Soviet Union. The first is not to enter the crushes of Washington. As early as 1989, the Chinese Communist Party identified the United States, which has a strong military and ideological advantage, as its main competitor. However, because America's power is so daunting, Beijing has tried to prevent the United States from seeing itself as an enemy it should concentrate on. This concentration destroyed the former Soviet Union. The Chinese Communist Party leader Deng Xiaoping's strategy of keeping a low profile 40 years ago was designed to establish good relations with the United States and other major countries in order to buy time and gain opportunities in global trade and advanced technology. Deng Xiaoping said that once China reaches the level of a developed country, China's strength and role in the world will be very different. The second lesson is to avoid a Cold War-style arms race. The strategic arms race eventually exhausted the former Soviet Union and made the US economic advantage stand out. Therefore, Beijing has maintained a relatively minimum nuclear deterrence for many years. However, after Xi Jinping came to power, It changed the style of previous leaders. From the Himalayas to the South China Sea to the East China Sea, the CCP has recently become more and more serious about almost all the shining points that the CCP considers to be a long-term or even historical legacy. Provocation. This makes the outside world very puzzled. Why does the CCP attack from all directions? What is the purpose of Xi Jinping? Michael Oslin, a researcher of the Modern Asia Project at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University in the United States, said in an online seminar that the CCP chose to try to resolve these old disputes at this time. Half of it is because of self-confidence in the past and the present, and the other half may be because of anxiety about the future. Oslin explained that China is currently the most powerful country in Asia, but at the same time the CCP is clearly aware that it faces powerful neighbors and powerful opponents including the United States, coupled with the realization that China's economy will face tremendous pressure in the future. The CCP itself lacks legitimacy, etc. Therefore, Xi Jinping may feel that now is the best time to act. Xi Jinping's predecessors have been infiltrating and subverting the United States, but they have been slow, gentle, and low-key. But when Xi Jinping took over, he began to become ostentatious. It seemed that Xi Jinping's diplomats suddenly changed their faces in order to cater to Xi Jinping's Liang Jia thought, and showed others in a rude style. Moreover, the CCP has begun to infiltrate the United States on a large scale, buying American politicians and influencing American elections. After Xi Jinping took office, the speed of infiltration into the United States began to increase dramatically, and the number of spies sent exponentially increased. Almost all Chinese-funded companies and news organizations in the United States have locked many spies, so that the United States used past laws against the Nazis. All Chinese journalists are required to register as foreign government agents. To see how the CCP infiltrated the United States, we must first understand what plans the Communist International had planned to destroy the United States. The Communists' insidious plan to infiltrate the US. The director of Nibble America is Curtis Bowers. In the summer of 1992, Bowers infiltrated an American Communist Party conference held at the University of California, Berkeley. Not long after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Soviet Union had disintegrated. The whole world is saying communism is over, and why the Communist Party of the United States held this meeting, and what intentions it has, aroused Bowers' interest.
And he asked me if I'd go attend a meeting for him at the University of California, Berkeley. He told me that the Communist Party USA had recently split over differences of how to best take America down. Some were wanting to still work toward a violent revolution, while others were wanting to focus their efforts on using public policy to subvert America from the inside. He was curious what they had to say. I mean, after all, the Berlin Wall had just come down, the Soviet Union had dissolved, and the whole world was saying communism is dead. So why were they meeting, and what were they up to? I was in graduate school at the time, and the whole idea of slipping in undercover into a communist meeting sounded pretty neat, so I decided to go. The first surprise I had was when I walked into the auditorium. I was expecting it to be filled with college radicals, but instead it was 50, 60, and 70-year-olds, grandparents, professionally dressed with briefcases, and I realized this might be a little more serious than I thought. As the weekend unfolded, I listened carefully as they outlined their plan and agenda, and how they were going to infiltrate the institutions of America to influence us in the direction they wanted us to go. To destroy our families, they wanted to promote cohabitation instead of marriage. They wanted to try to get children away into government programs at the earliest age possible. And they also said they'd like to get behind the feminist movement because they felt it had been very successful in making women discontent with marriage and motherhood. To destroy business, they wanted to get behind the environmental movement. And in 1992, the environmental movement was very modest, but they thought it was the only vehicle capable of creating enough regulation and red tape to discourage business growth. And finally, to destroy our culture of religion and morality, they said, if we can get Americans to accept homosexuality, They thought it would begin to extinguish our traditional moral values Americans held. I remember thinking at the time, this plan doesn't seem very realistic. It's not something I'll need to worry about in my lifetime.
At the meeting, Bowers heard that they were preparing to infiltrate the United States plans and programs of action in order to lead the American people in the direction they hoped to destroy the United States. The plan includes the use of advocating cohabitation to destroy the American family system, using the government to manage family education to influence the younger generation, supporting environmental movements, and enacting excessive rules and regulations to curb the development of enterprises, and using Americans to accept homosexuality to dismiss the American culture based on religious beliefs and morals. Bowers thought at the time that their plans were very unrealistic, and there was no need to worry about it in their lifetime. In 2008, Bowers served as the representative of the Idaho State Legislature, and one day suddenly remembered the goals listed by the American Communist Party in 1992, compared with the changes that the United States later experienced. Bowers could not believe they would be so successful. American families are falling apart. The environmental movement has become the most powerful force to destroy the free economy in the United States. And Washington is considering passing hate crime laws to criminalize any speech that people even make against the gay movement. Bowers felt that something must be done to let people understand the conspiracy of communism. So, he put out all his savings and completed the documentary Encroach on America after a lot of visits, research, and investigations over a period of 2 years.
It was 15 years later, I was appointed by the governor to be a state representative in the legislature. I'd only lived in my district for 2 years, so I thought it'd be a good idea if I wrote a monthly letter to the editor. Each month I wrote on a different topic. In January 2008, as I was contemplating what to write my letter on, I thought back to the meeting in 1992, and I thought of the goals they'd outlined and where America was today, and I couldn't believe how successful they had been. I mean, our families were totally disintegrating. The environmental movement had become the most powerful force for destroying our free markets, and hate crimes legislation was being considered in Washington, D.C. that made it a crime to even say anything against the homosexual movement. I realized people needed to know what was going on. After I wrote this letter, within days, people were protesting at the Capitol. It was the feature story on the evening news.
Controversial comments have state legislators buzzing tonight.
After a freshman lawmaker alleges the communist agenda has infiltrated mainstream America. It's the big story, live at 6.
And over 40 letters to the editor had been printed in response to what I'd said.
Hey, I just wanted to give you support on your newspaper article. Don't let them grind you down. Bye.
I realized then I'd hit on something.
In the documentary, Bowers also introduced the book The Naked Communist, written by former FBI investigator Clarence Skousen. This book lists 45 goals of the Communist Party in 1958. The 40th goal: let people lose trust in the family system, encourage chaos and make divorce easy to achieve. The 17th goal: control the school. Take school as the driving belt of socialist ideals. Weaken the teaching syllabus. Control the Teachers Association. The 25th goal: to destroy cultural and moral standards by promoting pornography in books, magazines, and movies. The 26th goal: treat homosexuality, depravity, and chaos as normal, natural, and healthy. The 27th goal: to infiltrate the church and replace the apocalyptic religion with the social religion. Let people lose faith in the Bible. The 20th and 21st goals: infiltrate the news media and control important positions in the radio, television, and film and television industries. These goals are similar to those heard at the meeting that Bowers attended in 1992, and the ultimate goal is to subvert the United States from within. Bowers said that the Communist Party had achieved almost all its goals, and no one even noticed it. For at least the past 50 years, they have been hiding behind the scenes and in the shadows, actively engaged in their activities, in an attempt to bring our people and our culture to destruction. After understanding these plans laid down by the communists, and looking back at the CCP's infiltration of the United States over the years, it is not difficult to understand the huge conspiracy hidden behind it, which is ultimately to destroy the United States. The founder of the new China Federation, Mr. Guo Wengui, disclosed in the National Press Club of Washington, D.C. on October 5, 2017 that the CCP had implemented the Blue Golden Plan overseas to rule and infiltrate the world. Mr. Guo Wengui said that he discovered that Blue Golden had completely penetrated the United States. The blue in the Blue Golden is network control, through the purchase of various media platforms, and thus achieves full brainwashing. Gold is the use of money to buy, using illegal profits to buy, gambling, pornography, and other industries. Grasp their evidence for extortion. Guo Wengui also disclosed another special plan of the CCP, called the 3F Plan. He said that the 3F Plan is to weak, mess up, and kill the United States. He said, US CIA, FBI, and other departments are learning about it. Mr. Guo Wengui also warned that the foundation of freedom in the United States is being severely weakened. The damage caused by the Blue Golden and 3F programs may be 100 or even 1,000 times that of 911. These two programs of the CCP in the United States are now proceeding very successfully and quickly. Contrary to cannibalization of the United States, the methods of promoting pornography and controlling the media in the Blue Gold Plan are part of the Communist Party's plan to destroy the United States. The CCP has inherited the Communist International, and the CCP has been steadily implementing the infiltration and subversion of the United States by the Communist International. Blue Gold is just one of the methods used by the CCP to subvert the United States. On October 26, 2020, the Trump motorcade paraded in New York, but was blocked by the Antifa and BLM crowds. The BLM movement initiated by Minnesota has now become a paradise for anarchists. Democratically ruled cities like Portland are still occupied by the BLM masses and are divided into anarchist special zones. Robbery, violence entered anarchy. These two organizations have been proved to be funded and directed by the Chinese Association for the Advancement of People under the control of the CCP. The main purpose is to highlight that American democracy is not a good system, and to deepen the people's impression of the Trump administration's inability to quell chaos and in turn help Biden. In addition, the continuous riots in the United States made the spread of the Wuhan plague impossible to stop. These have become the fatal injuries of Trump's re-election. As long as Trump is pulled down, it will be a great contribution to the CCP. It is an indisputable fact that the CCP has penetrated all over the world. For example, Chen Yonglin, the former first secretary of the CCP Consulate General in Sydney, once stated that the CCP's penetration of Australia is divided into four aspects: politics, military, economy, and culture. It is divided into official and private channels and penetrates into the three levels of the Australian government at the same time, echoing each other. In addition, the CCP also controls social media. News stated that Facebook has been openly flattering the CCP for a long time. As part of its efforts to enter the Chinese market, Facebook has developed a tool for third-party vendors to censor social networks. The Chinese Communist Party's official media often use paid interstitials in mainstream American media to promote the content they need. This practice has aroused additional attention from the US, China Economic and Security Review Commission, USCC, on the CCP's borrowed boat to conduct media infiltration. USCC Chairman Carolyn Bartholomew believes that American society should be wary of the CCP's covert propaganda methods. This Chinese content paid for by the CCP should transparently reveal where the information comes from. The American think tank and the website established by the Center for American Security once published an article titled "The CCP Plays with Hidden Power in the United States." The article said that China Radio International quietly acquired several American radio stations, According to the data provided by the Chineonsis.com website, China International Station has so far acquired the G&E radio station in the Washington area under its command. In addition, the radio station also controls the broadcast hours of at least 15 radio stations in major U.S. cities, including Boston, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. The film Cannibalize America stated that the planned infiltration of the communists has effectively controlled the influential media. As a result, many people have discovered that the media is biased. Even the Washington Post admits, yes, we are partial to Obama. So what? Cliff Kincaid said that when you say, what about that, your prejudices and opinions are incorporated into the news you report. This becomes that they decide which things you have the right to know. Janet Porter, believes that this is not just prejudice. It has changed from political prejudice to radicalism. CCP's penetration of Hollywood. Cannibalization of America reveals that one of the communists' important plans to destroy the United States is to infiltrate Hollywood, so as to achieve control of these highly influential circles. An important article on the website of the American think tank Center for American Security, the CCP plays with hidden power in the US, summarizes, does the CCP allow American companies to acquire Chinese radio stations and control broadcast content? Does the CCP allow American companies to purchase Chinese film production, distribution and projection systems so that they can spread American values? Can American producers broadcast a documentary in China and tell the audience what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989? An objective understanding of the CCP and the CCP's rigorous review show that none of this will happen. But all this does not prevent the CCP from promoting its ideas overseas, especially in the United States. The commentary on the video played on the website created by the US Security Center mentioned that Hollywood is now also censoring in accordance with the requirements of the Chinese Communist Party in order to have more opportunities to enter the Chinese market. The Wonder Group, which is closely related to the CCP's acquisition of the US film industry, will give the CCP greater power to control what Americans can and cannot see. This is not what Americans want to see. Eichmann said in Cannibalization of America, if a system is to be destroyed, children will always be the first target. Lenin said, give me 4 years to teach my children, and the seeds I sown will never be eradicated. Ideological control of students is one of the goals of the communists. Bowles said that after a community college gathering in Minnesota played Encroach on America, a man stood up and said, congratulations on your research and discovering the influence of various socialist and communist thoughts on the United States. I want to pay tribute to you. He paused and then said, I want to tell you, I am a professor in this university, I am a communist, and we will win because we have mastered your next generation, then went out. The control of students' thinking has always been the focus of the CCP's attention, and this control also extends overseas. The CCP has spent huge sums of money to establish Confucius Institutes in various countries. Currently, there are 103 Confucius Institutes and 501 Confucius classrooms in the United States. Official data show that since its establishment in 2004, the total expenditure has exceeded $2 billion. Peterson, the research director of the Association of All Aesthetics, conducted an in-depth investigation of the Confucius Institutes of 12 American universities and published a report revealing the actual situation of the CCP's export of its ideology and interference in the academic freedom of American universities through Confucius Institutes. Peterson said, we want to know how much authority the CCP has given to influence the original teaching. We found that it has a great influence on teachers, textbooks, and even other professors who teach similar courses in the United States. The CCP is in American universities have such influence, which is very worrying. One of the generous acts of the Confucius Institute is to donate books to the library, but these books are filtered and help brainwash. Julie Wang, who works as a librarian at Binghamton University, said that the Confucius Institute China headquarters has donated thousands of books to the library. Unfortunately, some important historical events have been deleted from the book. She was disappointed. Benedict Rogers, a writer, and the East Asian team leader of the international human rights organization CSW, wrote an article in the Huffington Post in January this year. Based on years of research on China and a large amount of data collected, he deeply exposed the Confucius Institute's overseas experience. The real purpose. He stated that Confucius Institutes are the most dangerous means for the CCP to infiltrate the West, embedded in universities around the world, so that the CCP can influence its courses. Rogers also disclosed that the CCP has allowed Western universities to serve it through Confucius Institutes. By cooperating with Western universities, it will be attached to Western universities. Xu Lin, Director General of the Confucius Institute headquarters, also acknowledged this. She said that the work of the Confucius Institute is an important part of our soft power. We want to expand the influence of the CCP. She also added, foreign universities work for us. In addition to education, media, and film and television, the CCP is also infiltrating the United States in more forms. The American writer Uzi wrote on the blog of Foreign Policy in 2016, revealing that some Chinese associations in New York are registered as non-profit organizations in the United States and are actually foreign aid agencies of the United Front Work Department of the Communist Party of China. Some people who have taken refuge in the CCP act as agents of the CCP in the United States and implement CCP policy in the United States. After 4 months of investigation and interviews with more than 20 analysts, government officials, and experts on US-China affairs, Newsweek published the online version of the survey article to the public on October 26. The article disclosed that 600 groups are related to the CCP's influence activities in the United States. The article in Newsweek pointed out that experts said that intervention in the US elections is only the tip of the iceberg of the CCP's larger and deeper influence and intervention activities over the years. In the long run, this is a more worrying threat. The investigation by Newsweek found that the Chinese Communist Party and other entities associated with the Chinese Communist government have been opening up multiple channels in the United States through the federal, state, and local levels to create conditions and establish interpersonal relationships to further promote Beijing's political and economic interests and ambition. According to John Garnett, an Australian political analyst and an expert on the CCP's global intervention issues, the CCP uses channels including companies, universities and think tanks, social and cultural groups, overseas Chinese organizations, Chinese media and Chinese social media, text information. WeChat. Newsweek found about 600 such groups in the United States, all of which maintain regular contact with the CCP and accept the CCP's guidance. Such groups exist not only in the United States, but also in other countries. William Evalina, Director of the National Center for Counterintelligence and Security of the United States, said that the purpose of the CCP's activities seems to be to shape the US policy environment, to pressure politicians whose views are not in the CCP's interests, to help the CCP transfer and counter criticism. According to Newsweek, in order to help implement its plan to influence and interfere in the United States, the CCP relies on what Xi Jinping calls the country's magic weapon, that is, the party's United Front system. The United Front is led by the United Front Work Department of the CPC Central Committee. Newsweek found that there are about 600 organizations related to the United Front of the CCP in the United States, including at least 83 Chinese associations, 10 Chinese aid centers, 32 chambers of commerce and 13 Chinese language media brands, 38 organizations that promote the peaceful reunification of China and Taiwan, 5 friendship associations, and 129 other groups engaged in a series of activities such as education and culture. In addition, about half of the 70 associations of Chinese professionals in the United States are also related to the United Front. There are also 265 Chinese student and scholar associations in the United States, and they often associate with the CCP politics through CCP diplomats, such as the CCP Consulate Education Affairs Officer. The article stated that as the digging continues, There seem to be countless groups in the United States that have relations with the CCP's United Front. According to reports from many Chinese-language media and United Front organizations, the C-100, a Chinese-American organization based in New York established nearly 30 years ago, is another group. The purpose of the CCP's activities in the US is to subvert the US from within. The article pointed out that the CCP's activities are extremely broad, involving social and commercial gatherings, and extensive information and propaganda. It is also establishing political and economic relations in the United States that can be used to serve the interests of Beijing. The article said that the CCP has also been accused of large-scale economic espionage in the United States. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI Director Christopher Wray stated in the Hudson Institute think tank in the summer of 2020 that the FBI opens a CCP-related investigation every 10 hours. There are nearly 5,000 counter-espionage cases in the United States. Among them, almost half are related to China. Experts warn that the CCP's purpose is to change or subvert the United States from within and cultivate a positive view of the CCP. Dean Boyd, Chief Communications Officer of the National Center for Counterintelligence and Security, said that the U.S. Justice Department, State, and FBI are digging into the truth hidden in certain organizations and activities. As he told Newsweek, the influence of the CCP has never stopped. The US Newsweek reported on Xi Jinping's conspiracy to overthrow the United States. There are 600 pro-communist groups used by the CCP, including the China Association for the Promotion of Peaceful Unification in the United States. This association has branches all over the world, always in Beijing, under the orders of Wang Yang, a member of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China. The United States has declared that this association is the CCP agency. Let us look back. If the Biden family scandal is not revealed before the election, after Biden is elected, Xi Jinping will definitely control Biden with this information. Isn't the United States dangerous? Therefore, in essence, the CCP has no intention of establishing a good relationship with the United States. It only deceives, exploits, infiltrates, and subverts. It is not so much that Xi Jinping messed up Sino-US relations, as it was that Xi Jinping was deceived by Zhang Weiwei, Hu Wengang, Lin Yifu, Jin Canrong, and other crooks, and his confidence inflated too fast. He was eager to challenge the United States and expose the CCP's strategic intentions too early. Xi Jinping believes in these people who can only flatter, so since she took office, almost all major decisions and measures have had serious strategic misjudgments, lacked far-reaching strategizing, and even recklessly rashly. The Sino-US trade war originated from the CCP's failure to abide by its contractual commitments. This could have been resolved at the negotiation table, but when it comes to Xi Jinping, the problem lies in Xi Jinping's willful behavior, not just like a primary school student running the country, but also like schizophrenia running the country, hitting the right hand with the left hand and kicking the left foot with the right foot. Xi Jinping is in a dilemma and at a loss. What he said was completely different from what he did. That's why the first phase agreement the CCP signed in the trade war is like a piece of waste paper. In addition, Xi Jinping was influenced by Mao Zedong and had a paranoid sense of mission. He regarded the United States as an enemy. In order to prevent Trump from being elected, he did not hesitate to launch the CCP's decades of lurking forces, manipulate Antifa, BLM, and even mobilize a common resentment against biological virus attacks. It will be confirmed sooner or later. At present, the origin of the virus in Wuhan has been basically confirmed. The Wuhan P4 laboratory has produced the virus, although the US government has not officially announced. The former Secretary of State Pompeo and former White House Chief Advisor Navarro have repeatedly stated after resignation that they had read information has been sufficient to confirm that the Wuhan P4 laboratory produced this virus, but it is only a question of when it will be announced. I don't know who Xi Jinping can find responsible for his crimes other than becoming a god or truly conquering the world. In any case, today's Sino-US relations have been completely lost in the hands of Xi Jinping. If the United States is still in various negotiations with China, I can only say that it is now the United States' turn to engage in strategic deception and gain time. Come on, Xi Jinping, the Terminator of the CCP. That's it for today, and I will continue in the next issue. Thank you for watching. Please click a like and subscribe.